Hello, everyone, and welcome to the FCBDU podcast, your backstage pass to the magical world of Fat Chance Belly Dance style. I'm your host, DeAnna, and I invite you to join me along with a variety of special guests and experts as we explore the beauty, intricacies, and lifestyle topics of this captivating dance style. Grab a comfortable seat, tune in, and let's embark on a journey through the rhythms, movements, and history that make Fat Chance Belly Dance style an enchanting experience like no other. In this episode, Lacey and I continue the conversation on goal setting, planning, and turning your dreams into a reality. So in part one, we introduced the importance of creating goals, and we looked at why some goals are more challenging to achieve than others. But in this part two, now we're going to get into how to create successful goals and what types of goals tend to be more successful than others. We're going to use the acronym PRANA, PRANA, to guide you through reassessing your goals and really turning them into your reality. So grab a pen and paper and let's get started. So I wanted to go into what types of goals are mostly successful. So we've kind of talked about which ones tend to not be successful because you've got to think about the motivation behind them. But what kind of goals are successful? So a few years ago, I was sitting down, I was thinking about the goals that are successful based off of like the trainings that I've had in the corporate world and the books that I've read and the things that I've experienced. And I came up with an acronym because that helps me remember. And the acronym was PRANA. That's the name of my company. Yay! So we're going to go through the types of goals that are most successful, and then we'll look at how to create those goals. Okay. Great. So the P stands for positive. Keep it positive. By positive, I don't mean like, yay, everything's going to be great. I'm going to achieve my goal. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, that's toxic positivity.
Right. What I mean is, reword your goal in a way that it is a positive outcome instead of removing things. So Our brains and our neural pathways like to add things. We're more productive when we add in new things. And also, if we are constantly thinking, I'm going to use smoking for an example, just because that's kind of the most common thing, but or used to be back in the day. If you're constantly like, I want to quit smoking, or let's actually use one of the
food's a great example. Yeah,
because let's use Lacey's. Like, let's say Lacey, you're addicted to potato chips.
Great,
girl, right? So you're addicted to potato chips, and you're like, but I want to eat healthier, so I have to quit eating potato chips. And then your goal is to quit eating potato chips. Quit eating potato chips. What is happening in your brain? You are repeating the word potato chips all the damn time, right? It's kind of like people that say, I want to quit Facebook. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to get on Facebook. And your brain all day is like, don't check Facebook. Don't check Facebook. You are reiterating that word in your brain.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking about what do you want to remove, think about what do you want to add, right?
Exactly.
So instead of thinking, I want to get rid of potato chips, okay, go back to your why. Why do you want to get rid of potato chips? Well, I want to eat healthier. Okay, so what can you do instead of potato chips? Well, I also want to drink more water. Great. How about I want to drink more water? And we'll get to a little bit more specific in that. So instead of thinking, I want to quit eating potato chips, just be thinking, I want to drink more water, or I want to eat healthier snacks. I want to eat carrots or something like that. So it's about changing the mindset of where you are so that you're not reiterating in your brain the thing that you are trying to get rid of because that's not going to help you.
Well, because goals shouldn't feel like punishment. That's, I think, a huge thing, depending on your personal mindset. So if we're like, I'm as positive as everybody thinks I am, I can be quite negative, and I can get really depressed, and I automatically think the worst thing and all of that kind of stuff. Because Alex often says to me, he's like, I'm not supposed to be the positive one in this relationship, right? Because I'm like, oh, I won't, and I call myself Chicken Little, like the sky is falling. So making it about bringing yourself forward, right? That what do you want to add versus what you're taking away, which is really a punishment, because then you can go down a negative spiral of like, oh, well, I've always done this. I'll never da da da. Like all of that will just drive you down. So the more that you can focus in on the addition, and vocabulary is huge. Like how we speak to ourselves more than anything. I think that that can really change your outlook for sure. So I love that, like rewording into what you want to bring in. I love that. Love it.
Yeah. Okay. So be thinking about these things and then kind of restructure your goal a little bit. I'd love for you guys to be writing them down. So keep it positive. We're not talking, like I said, we're like Lacey said, we're not talking about toxic positivity. We're thinking about wording it. And then be realistic. And I'm not trying to burst your bubble or anything, but this goes back to something Lacey was saying earlier. For instance, and I'm going to use career growth as an example. If you're wanting a promotion for your career growth, okay, what's going to happen once you get that promotion? Oh, I'm going to have to work 5 more hours every day or every week, or wow, that's going to take a lot of I'm going to actually have to travel if I do that. Like be realistic with what you're doing. Are you willing to do the work? Like, I want to teach classes online. Okay, are you willing to research and set up and pay for the technology that it takes to do that? Are you willing to put in the time that it takes to market that and to plan the classes and to be, like you have to think about it. Is it realistic? Because what is it realistically going to take for you to get there? Because oftentimes you're up here in this, like, I want to do this thing. I'm going to make it happen. Okay. But what's involved?
For sure. Well, and I think, oh gosh, I just had it. So realistic, being realistic lets you know too, if it's within your scope, right? So sometimes the thing that we want, there's actually like 3 more goals that need to be in front of it, right? So you actually learn that it's like, oh, that's a little bigger. Oh, but if I do this though, and if I do, so then it becomes smaller. And then that gigantic thing that was too big, that was unrealistic, becomes realistic over time. So it's also like this really great way, to ground things, because I feel like goals sometimes just feel so ether and so big and out, but the reality of them, what is it going to take? Do I have it? Is this goal right for me? Because that's what I found so often is it's like, okay, well, the reality is that I'm going to need this and this and this, and I'm not willing to sacrifice these other things that are equally important to me. So instead of, well, I'm never going to get it, you're making the active choice to say it's not for you. And that's super, super like freeing to just go, oh, wow, I thought that was really important to me. It's actually not. Great. And you're in that power. So it's good.
I love that, Lacey. And it changes your mindset. And for not even just for that example, but like it changes your mindset for in the future. So you're not beating yourself up about not doing the thing. It's like, no, actually, I see what that's going to take, and I have other priorities, and that's just not it,
Yeah, exactly. Again, it just kind of circles it back to you, your core values. What do you want? How do you want to get it?
So the next one I have is actionable, and some of these we're going to reiterate later on in a different way, but actionable. And what I mean by this is, is it something that you can control, or do you have to rely on someone else to make that happen? So, for instance, again, kind of relaying this back to like a career growth thing, I'm going to get a 10% raise this year. Great. Who's responsible for giving you that raise? Because that's probably not something that you can do for yourself. You know what I mean? So maybe you can work toward a certain thing or whatever, but if your goal relies on someone else doing the thing, you need to think about that and take that into consideration so that when it doesn't happen, you don't hold that anger or that resentment to yourself or to someone else. So you have to think about, is it actionable? Can it actually happen? Or are you wishing upon a star that someone else does this thing for you?
Yeah. And that comes into so many things, or just kind of anchoring in how much responsibility you actually hold in that, right? Like, okay, if I want the 10% raise, absolutely, I can work hard, I can hit my goals, but at some point I'm going to have to release that responsibility because it can only go so far, right? That's a perfect example of with my studio. And I thought if I just worked hard enough, then I would get the people. Well, I eventually had to understand that I can work as hard as I want, but if people aren't coming in, people aren't coming in, and not all of that is my fault. But that reality, those actions do have results that affect my goals, right? So that's what I meant by in the beginning when I was like, we have to interact with everyone else's goals and everyone else's energy too. So sometimes, and I know we're going to get to this, but when something can feel like a setback, it's really just how things are interacting, and to take like a minute and to reflect upon what you did, maybe what you didn't do, and then readjust. So, and I know we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah. Lacey says, DeAnna, you can give yourself a raise. So this is a great example, right? So setting up my financial goals for 2022, because that's where my brain goes as an accountant, right? And like, I sat down and I was like, okay, well, let's start with this concept. I want to have 10% growth in revenue next year. And then I sat down with the numbers and I was like, okay, that's going to mean that I have to have X number. I don't have the numbers here. I would totally share them with you. I'd have X number of additional monthly subscribers, not just people kind of coming and going, but like additional monthly subscribers. Okay, great. Well, let's look at your history, DeAnna. Can that happen? Based off of the history, that's going to be a long shot. Like, am I setting myself up for failure? So then I have to adjust. Okay, well, if I have to make 10% growth, like, why do I want to make 10% growth? And if it's because I need to maybe my expenses, or like maybe be able to do some things next year. Okay, well, maybe I need to adjust. Am I willing to add in additional maybe workshops, or who knows about travel schedules? So I'm not even planning on that. You know what I mean? Am I willing to do other things to make that happen? Or do I need to be realistic and adjust my lofty goal because it just isn't going to work? And you have to balance this out with, well, that's never going to happen. Like, there's a balance of being realistic and still being motivated, right?
I think that it really, like, as you're talking about it, when I think about it, I feel like it all comes back. And again, like the woo-wooiness kind of comes out of me, but it's like, it really is you having the power that things aren't happening to you, that you're deciding. That it isn't kind of well, this didn't happen, or it's never gonna. Well, no, it was, I looked at things and it was like, okay, right now, this isn't feasible, or my history does not indicate that I'm going to meet that yet. But what I could do is have a 5% growth. Is that available to me? So, just adjusting so that there is a positive at the end of it all. And who knows, like, one of the things, again, I knew I was going to share quite a bit of this. My husband's viewpoint on goals is really interesting, right? So normally I'm the world thinker, like I'm the exaggerated thinker. But when it comes to, for example, we want to do stuff in the house, like I'll use that as the goal, right? There's a lot of things. We want to fix stuff, we want to repair, we want to build, we want to remodel. There's a lot of things. But for me, I tend to be like, things aren't happening, so it's never going to happen, right? Like, I'm not helpful, right? I'm just like, well, nothing's happened and we're not talking about it. So I guess you just, right? Like, I'm not helpful. So we had this great discussion, because for me, what equals things are moving forward is that there are little things that I start to notice. That's how I do my personal things. Like, I need little things to start to change so that I can stay motivated. That's me, right? Where for my husband, he's like, no, we have a long goal. He's like, I don't care if it takes 10 years. He's like, the timeline is not important. He's like, we will get it done as it needs to. And that's like a completely different mindset for me. It's teaching me that it's like, okay, so what are we doing? We have to continue to work. We're going to need time. We need there's a lot of things that we talk about that we need, and what is realistic to get there. Like, is it realistic right now when we need to, I don't know, pay the mortgage? We'll just say that. Or, to build the new shed in the backyard. Like, you have to think of things. But if I pay the mortgage and I don't buy the shed, does that mean I'm never going to get the shed? No, that's not what that means, right? But it can be easy to get, thrown off of that often, and then be like, oh, see, nothing ever good happens, right? Like, you can drive yourself down that way instead of seeing the end goal and really moving towards it, and having like the long game, right? That's the phrase I'm looking for, the long game. And I'm not good at the long game. I'm not good at it, but I'm fine. Like, but I am good at the short, like, sprints. So if I can, like, make things, smaller, then it can feel like you're getting the progress that you want. So hopefully that made sense to you. I'm sorry.
That was a great, that made really great sense. I'm a long game person. So it's like, well, okay, so 10% isn't realistic this year, but that's okay, because that just means that I also I'll have to sacrifice things, right? I don't upgrade the laptop this year, or I don't add the additional, I don't know, marketing person, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen.
Right.
So, and that's fine. Yeah.
And that's fine.
So we have positive, realistic, and actionable. So those
Yes.
are PRA. And then the next one that I have on here is nurtured. And this means, do you have the support that you need? Right. So what I mean by that is,
this one is painful.
Painful
for me.
But
it's good.
This is an example that I like to use. I want to have and this might go with maybe with Natty's anxiety thing, right? Like, I want to create a daily meditation practice, or I want to create a meditation practice. Let's just say that I want to create a meditation practice. Okay, great. Do you have roommates that aren't aware of these things, or aren't nurturing the space that you need in order to have that? Do you have a space set up that you can create that supports that, right? So it's like, well, let's say I want to stop eating potato chips. I don't know, I'm just going back to the potato chips. Well, that's great, but do the people around you, are they going to support that? Like, is this a nurtured goal? And a lot of times you can address that. And so that's just a way that it's going to be more successful, is to find ways that you can set up your space or adjust your life. And we'll get into some of those habits that will nurture the goal that you are trying to achieve. Because if you have that struggle where you're constantly working against time or people or your space, it's just going to make it harder and harder to achieve the goal, and easier to make excuses to not achieve it. Right?
Yeah.
So Lacey, you said this one was like,
yeah, like the idea of feeling like, well, because for me it equals asking for things, like asking for what you need, which is definitely, like, I struggle with that big time. And then nurtured equals giving myself the space to get what I need. And I will talk myself out of what I need in order to work, to take care of the house, to do the whatever. And I will talk myself out of it, because that's the like a want, not a need, is the best, like, example I can give right now. It's like, oh, well, I needed to do the newsletter, and I needed to do this, and I needed to do that. And then, oh, well, I don't have any time, but I achieved all the things everybody else needed. And I won't, like, allow myself space. I won't nurture myself for that. Like, it just, and that's the way I end up reading that, is I have to even allow myself the space for the thing I actually want, like what is happening. Yeah. So that's a tough one, because I'll long, like, lifetime goal for me is, like, my issue with guilt. So I'll feel guilty if I spend time doing this thing that feels frivolous, right? So like let's say my goal is that I want to get back to my daily yoga practice, right? So instead of, I don't know, vacuuming, I'm in here stretching, right? Like, my brain will do that. It'll just be like, well, you're just when you have other things. And so that kind of, and I don't get, Alex is super supportive. So it's not like I don't have that type of lack of support, but I do it to myself. Yeah, like, I'll actually talk myself out of things and not allow me the space. So if you're one of those people, I feel you. So thinking of nurtured is also you. Like, are you giving yourself the space and the time, and the, like, that you're worthy? Oh, God, it sounds so weird. But yes, that you are worthy. That's, again, like, sounds like self-help book, but but it's true. It's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you willing to? And maybe that's the goal, right? Instead of like, okay, well, I know I'm trying to make myself have this yoga practice every day, but I know that this is holding me back. So maybe part of the goal, maybe the goal for the first couple of months, is to carve out space each day for yourself to just not do anything for anyone else. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of like you're saying, like, chunk it out. So that might be a step one situation of the goal. And then it's like, now that I feel pretty comfortable, I realize that the world's not going to end when I spend 20 minutes, like, not tending to other people's needs. Right. Now I can use that 20 minutes to fill my cup and to
Yeah.
do my yoga practice or to
Yeah.
whatever, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and then the last, and this kind of brings us into this last one
Yes.
in this section, one for prana. Remember, so we have PRANA. So we have positive, realistic. What did I have? I have wrong.
Yeah. Positive, realistic,
Yeah,
actionable,
nurtured.
nurtured, and
And this next one
accountable.
is accountable. And we were talking about this the other day, Lacey.
Yeah.
So accountable basically is holding yourself accountable. And this works for some people, it doesn't work for everybody, but holding yourself accountable or having an accountability partner. Or like I know that some things that motivate me, it's like if a group is relying on me, that I know that motivates me. So if I assign myself a, I don't know, let's say I want to get better at a certain, let's say I want to get better at Zills, right? Then I'm going to put myself out there and say, I'm going to play Zills in this show in 3 months.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yeah.
holding yourself accountable. But I know, Lacey, we were talking the other day also, and I do this part too. I mean, I do both of these depending on the goal, but like I don't tell people what I'm working
Right.
on.
Yeah. Like I basically can kind of divvy it up as you were giving those examples. Like if it's like a work goal, like what type of goal is it, right? So if it's a work goal or like a skill goal, then I might share that, right? I might put myself out there and give myself a due date and then have to meet that. I'm totally that way when it comes, like I teach for a reason, right? Like I'm not a super motivated, dancer on my own. So like I need people to, like rely on me, and Lacey said, and all of that. But when it's personal stuff, there's, kind of a phrase: to know, to will, to dare, to be silent. And yeah, that's good. That's a deep dive. But so to know, to will, to dare, to be silent. So those things are the way that I go into my own like personal kind of stuff. And personal doesn't necessarily have to be like deep, but it's like things that are about me as an individual. I tend to keep really like close to my chest. And I think some of it is fear-based, I'll just be honest, right? That if I'm sharing the thing that I'm kind of raw about, then it lets others have permission to interact with me about that thing that isn't solidified for me yet. Yeah. So that's why I don't share it. The other part is that there are certain things I feel like are just like, they're my work. Like that's what I'm doing. And I don't want to feel the pressure of someone else's timeline or a comparison that might happen. So like, that's why like a lot of times, like I don't do well with challenges. I know we were, chatting about that, like online challenges, even if it's skill-based, don't work for me necessarily because my timeline is different. And so if I'm not there yet, or I needed more time, less time, what have you, then I feel this need of comparison that starts to enter into my goals, and it doesn't motivate me. In fact, it makes me kind of feel worse. So I know that that's just not me. Does that make a challenge bad? Does that mean that people that do it are not? No, not at all. It's just my process that I'm able to see like, oh, that doesn't work for me. Okay, cool. And make other adjustments. So the accountability is tricky for me because I'm not a self-motivated person all the time. So that's where like writing things down and then looking at them later. So I try to be like my own accountability buddy, like in a weird way. If I write something down, and then I try to keep things loose so that I don't feel pressured, right? But then like I usually do things monthly. I'll check in with myself and I'll go, where are we at? And then I can kind of see, and that's normally how that works. Yeah. So, yeah.
Next up in part 3 of this series, we're going to take your newly designed goals and we're going to put them into an actionable plan using an acronym called SMART, or SMART goals. So be sure to tune in for our next episode, and we're going to help turn your dreams into a reality.